OSU High to its first, and hopefully not last, state basketball championship in 1961. And Mr. Grawer would later coach freshman basketball in this room, in this space. That was his first job out of college. He came back to St. Louis U High to work. He coached freshman basketball and varsity baseball. Now, if you fast forward to 1977, I was a freshman at St. Louis U High. And I was sitting in this room right about where I'm standing right now when the DeSmet Spartans paid a visit here. And at the time, DeSmet was the gold standard of metropolitan area basketball. They hadn't lost in a couple of years. They had stars like Steve Stefanovich, Mark Alcorn, guys who played major college basketball. And I was just in awe of how well run and how well prepared that team was. And the guy at the helm of that team, the coach, was Rich Grawer. Fast forward again to the 1980s. A kid named Kevin Grawer played in this space. He's part of the story of this room. He was a star at CBC High School when they came to pay a visit on Oakland Avenue. So clearly our featured speakers have a connection to this place. They have a connection to this institution. And I hope in their remarks they're able to share some of their story with us in just a moment. So who are these guys? Who is Kevin Grawer? We'll start with the son. The St. Louis Fathers Club, we talked about whom to invite to be our speakers, and we thought it would be a good idea, since it's the Father Son Banquet, to have a father and son talk to us. Kevin Grawer is currently the principal of Maplewood Richmond Heights High School. He doesn't look like a principal. He's too young to be a principal. Where he's told us that his mission is to inspire and prepare students as leaders, scholars, and citizens for a diverse and changing world. He is married. His lovely wife, Allegra, is with us tonight. They have 3 children. Kevin graduated from CBC, as I mentioned. And then he attended and played basketball at St. Louis University, where Rich Grawer was the coach. Can you imagine that, playing for your dad, major college basketball? I wonder what that was like. Maybe he'll tell us. He later transferred to the University of Tulsa, where he played for a guy named Tubby Smith. Have you ever heard of Tubby Smith? And he wanted Kevin Grawer to play basketball at Tulsa. And Kevin played with 3 guys who went on to the NBA. While Kevin was at Tulsa, they didn't make it to the big dance once. They made it both years while he was there. And they made it to the Sweet 16 both times. So he's no slouch in terms of basketball. He later played professional basketball in Argentina. And after college, he taught and coached at CBC. Then he went back to Argentina. He later worked at Kirkwood High School, where he coached basketball. And then he worked in Spain for a while. So he has a very worldwide perspective on things. Kevin is a very strong proponent of creating an academic culture built on positive relationships and a worldwide atmosphere. And a few weeks ago, I had the honor of having lunch with Coach Grawer and Kevin. And Kevin mentioned a couple of things that really stayed with me at that lunch. The first thing he said was, as an educator, as a coach, as a teacher, it's important to love your students and coworkers, meaning you have to have a genuine concern for their well-being. And it was very clear to me, I think I know where he learned that. It was probably at the dinner table at home. The second thing he said to me was, at Maplewood Richmond Heights, where he currently works, he's not sure if a Father-Son Banquet would really get off the ground there, because there's a fair number of young men there who don't have fathers or father figures in their lives. And I thought, how incredibly sad, yet true. So I can't wait to hear what Kevin has to tell us in a few minutes. But as I suggested, I think the acorn probably did not fall far from the tree Rich Grawer is married to Teresa Grawer, and they have 6 children and 19 grandchildren. Mr. Grawer is a native St. Louisan. He grew up down in St. Francis de Sales Parish in South St. Louis, and his father thought it would be a good idea if he attended St. Louis U High. He played basketball here, as I mentioned, led the junior Bills to a state championship in '61. Then he went on to Rockhurst College, where he played basketball, and he was a national champion. I believe it was the NAIA National Championship at Rockhurst. After graduating from college, he accepted a teaching and coaching position at St. Louis U High, coaching freshman basketball and varsity baseball. He continued his coaching career at DeSmet High School and was there for 12 years. His teams at DeSmet, as I mentioned, they were quite good. He was 270 on the win column and 87 in the loss column. And he was later named to DeSmet's Hall of Fame in 1998. After spending a year on Norm Stewart's staff at the University of Missouri, Mr. Grawer took over the head coaching position at St. Louis University, an institution with a wonderful basketball history, but at the time, the program had really hit rock bottom. And I watched him rebuild it. I watched him revitalize it. And it was amazing what he did. His teams at St. Louis University played in 3 NIT tournaments and played for the title in New York twice. And in his 10 seasons at St. Louis University, he had 159 wins, averaging 16 wins per season. And Mr. Grawer is widely credited with bringing Billiken basketball back to where it is today. During his coaching career, he coached several future NBA players, including Anthony Bonner and Steve Stepanovich. And some of you may not know this, but he recruited a kid out of Venice, Illinois, who was known as the Venice Menace. He played at St. Louis University, and his name is Erwin Plaggett, the coach at St. Louis U High today. It's interesting how all of our stories touch one another, isn't it? It's interesting how places and people always seem to come full circle. And I think Coach Grawer will share some of those stories with us tonight. He wrote a very well-known book with Sally Raines entitled Youth Basketball Skills and Drills, which I've read several times. Now, my 3rd grade basketball team lost 22-2 last night. I'm not criticizing the book. I just don't think I'm a very good teacher. That's the problem. So, and even today, Mr. Grawer still works with a company by the name of the Maritime, where he helps educate educators about financial decisions. So he's still teaching after all these years. During our lunch, I told you a couple of things that Kevin said that stayed with me. Coach Grawer also said something during that lunch that stayed with me. I asked him, I said, do you keep in touch with some of your former players? He said, yeah, I talk to them all the time. And he pointed out that many of those young men did not have a father or a father figure in their life, and that he, their coach, filled that void then, and he continues to fill that void now. Truly a man for others. It is my great honor, I'm really looking forward to this presentation, to introduce the father and son team of Rich Grawer and Kevin Grawer.
This is not going to be a comedy routine. As I was trying to figure out what to say tonight, the word difficult came to mind. Difficult comes in all sizes, forms, and shapes. When I first got the job at St. Louis University, it was really, really difficult. I was a former high school coach. And as John said, I was fortunate to have good players and had a lot of success, and I thought, wow, I'm pretty good, this is going to be easy. You know, I had never had a losing season. I got to St. Louis University, and I quickly discovered it was not going to be easy. The school was on NCAA probation for what my predecessor had done. We were losing players right and left. Players were quitting the team. The average attendance at our games was under 2,000, some games 1,000. People used to ask me what times the games start. I'd say, what time can you get there? It was just awful. But again, I was going to be a Division I coach, and I was going to change this thing around really quick. When I went to my last game my first year, we played Oral Roberts University in Tulsa. And you know, like, you know, on your court you got Billikens at one end, or St. Louis U, or, you know, DeSmet. Well, they had Expect a Miracle at the end of both their course, at the end of the course. And I had, at that time, 6 players. The rest had quit, or I threw them off. One was carrying a gun, I threw him off. So we go to Oral Roberts with 6 players. By the way, my record at that time, John didn't say this, was 5 wins and 22 losses. So we go to Oral Roberts to play with 6 players. With 2 minutes to go, the second player fouled out. Now, if your math is as good as mine, when you have 6 and you subtract 2, you're left with 4. So we played the last 2 minutes. A Division I basketball team played the last 2 minutes of a Division I game with 4 players. Sad to say, we actually played better with 4 than when we had the 5. So difficult is a word that has been part of my life. Things have not come easy all the time. And I tie that in with tonight. As Kevin and I were thinking, what are we going to say? Because this is a difficult assignment. Maybe you fathers out there know who I am. One father, a friend of mine, said, we got the letter in the mail that you're talking at the Father Son Banquet. I said, are you coming? Well, he said, my son said, who's this Rich Grawer guy? And I don't think they're here, but that's all right. But anyway, when John Lally and David Laughlin asked us to speak, they said, we want you to talk about relationships. Now that's not a topic that's conducive to teenage young men. I think, as I said, I think the fathers might be interested in hearing what we had to say, but anyway, that's what made this difficult. Trying to say something that you young guys out there can grasp. And you're hearing it from a 69-year-old guy that maybe, according to some of my children, has lost touch with reality. So, realize that. So anyway, with all that in mind, I tried to just come up with some broad generalizations to get this thing started. And I thought about my dad. And one of the good things about John and David asking me to speak is, you know, in 69 years, I really hadn't thought very much about my dad and how he influenced me. I just didn't. I got a wife, 6 kids, 19 grandkids, a job, you know, all those, and I'm sure you dads out there know what I'm talking about. Trying to put bread on the table, try to make it economically feasible for your family to live comfortably and all that. And I also didn't, because I forgot about St. Louis U High. And this assignment made me think about those 2 things. First of all, about my thoughts of my dad, in general now. As a 4- and 5-year-old kid, I thought my dad knew everything. You guys out there, you can recall your 4th and 5th years on this earth, what do you think of your dads? But by 8 or 9 or 10, I thought my dad knows a lot of things. He doesn't know everything. And then as a teenager, I didn't know if my dad knew a damn thing. I thought I knew everything. So now you dads, because these guys out here are teenagers. As a 20-something, I got married, got a job. St. Louis U High was my first job. Started raising a family. And you know what? Dads, think about this. I kind of forgot about my dad. You know, I had a family, I had a wife, I had kids, a job, making money, trying to survive. As I moved into my 30s and 40s, you know, maybe Dad can answer some of the problems and help me solve some of the problems that arose in my life and my family. So I began to call on him for some things. As I moved into my 50s, I really didn't confront any problem without asking Dad. Now in my 60s, you know, I kind of would give anything to have him back, because he's not there. Because I still got problems, and I don't know how to solve them all. So with that kind of as a lead-in, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin here.
Thank you, Dad. Well, my name is Kevin Grawer. I'm 41 years old. I've got 3 kids of my own, and I got 5 brothers and sisters. I want to announce 2 of my brothers. Here today, they kind of snuck in the last minute. Brian and Tim, why don't you stand up? Tim's filming me to make sure I'm good right here. Well, you know, I've always known I was fortunate because I'm the son of Rich and Teresa Grawer. My role models were always right in front of me, and they rarely, if ever, let me down. The example they gave all of us was invaluable and the greatest gift of all. I work with students now, and many of them come from homes where they're in serious poverty. As the principal of Maplewood High School, the majority of our kids get a free lunch every day, and they don't have dads in their homes when they go home. And I see how it affects them on a daily basis. So I realized how lucky I was, how lucky you guys are. My parents were there. They were honest, they were hardworking, humble, and faithful. So SLUH students in the crowd today, like me, the way you look at your dad will change over time, I promise you that. As a high schooler, I knew my dad was knowledgeable, professional, very hardworking, but I wasn't always ready to listen to him. His examples, though, is what always resonated with me. No matter what, at that age, I was easily critical of him too. His faults, but at the same time, I also knew I possessed many of those same faults. Of course, having 6 kids, Dad had a lot to concern himself with. Still, I never ever recall Dad talking negative about his work, or really any other human being for that matter. Every morning he got up excited to go to work. In fact, I never once heard him call it work. He said, I'm going to school, I'm going to practice, I'm going to see so-and-so. And he was always upbeat. Really, his work wasn't work at all because he found his passion. If you find your passion, man, you got something going for you. Even when he knew he was about to get fired at St. Louis University and lose his job, he went into work upbeat every day. And that still amazes me. I'll never forget that. So let my dad take over for a minute. He wants to talk about how SLUH and his father influenced his life.
I grew up in South St. Louis, as John said. We had a 4-room house. I had one sister. She got the bedroom. Mom and Dad got a bedroom. I slept on the sofa. I went to St. Francis de Sales Parish. They had a high school attached to it at that time. My dad was tough. He taught me to compete. Anything I did, play hard, work hard, whatever you do it full force, whether it be playing Monopoly, playing catch with somebody, playing basketball in school. I wanted to go to St. Francis de Sales High School. That's where all my friends were. And we were a rather poor family. One day I come home and Dad says, you're taking the test at St. Louis High. I said, no, Dad, I don't want to go there. First of all, I knew it cost, now get this guys, $200. But that was a lot of money back then. And I knew Dad and Mom couldn't really afford that. They'd have to make some sacrifices. I also knew that where I lived, it would take me 3 buses to get to St. Louis High from where we lived. And I also knew all my friends were going to St. Francis. So Dad says, you're going to take the test. Now, I could have done one thing. I could have tanked the test. You know. But in my mind, because of the way he raised me to compete, I kept going back and forth. Tank the test, go to St. Francis, or do the best you can because that's what you were taught to do. I passed the test. And I went to St. Louis U High. As an 8th grader, I was the star basketball player on our team. I get to St. Louis High, go out with the freshman team and get cut. I went home crying. Mom says, I'm calling the coach. I said, no, Mom, don't call the coach. Dad said, you probably deserved it. You weren't good enough. You didn't work hard enough. Don't give me any of these tears. So that summer I worked, went out for the sophomore team, made it as the last player on the team, hardly ever played. Junior year, went out for the team, made it, rarely played. Senior year, went out for the team, made the starting lineup, we won the state championship. My running mate at guard is Art Zinselmeyer, he's here. I was admittedly the worst of the 5 starters. I think I averaged 4 points a game. But I had success. Then, when the season was over, I had a decision on college. We didn't have any money again. We barely made it through St. Louis High, and I didn't know what we were going to do for college. A Jesuit named Father Jerry Sheehan was the principal here. One day in April, he calls me into the office. I thought, oh, I'm in trouble. You don't get called to the principal's office unless you're in trouble. He said, Rich, Rockhurst College just called me and said that they're going to give me a scholarship to give to anybody I want at St. Louis High. Would you want it? I probably hit the ceiling by jumping in the air at the time because yes, I want it. He said, now it's only it's only tuition, so you got to pay for your room and your food. But when I told Dad, he said, we can manage that. So Father Sheehan, I'm ever grateful for that opportunity. Now, I did play baseball at St. Louis High, and so I had my coach, Emmett Hannick, and I don't know if Emmett's here tonight, but he was a great coach. And I had him call the coach at Rockhurst and set up a meeting with me and the coach over the phone. Man's name was Joe Bramer. He was the coach at Rockhurst, and I said, Joe, I played on the state championship team. You think you could help me out with room and board? And he said, Rich, I saw your team play. You were the worst player of those starters, just like I said I was. And he said, but I'm also the baseball coach. He said, I know you play baseball and you're a pretty good player. He said, if you play baseball for me, and if you can come out for the freshman team at Rockhurst and make that team, I will give you the room and board. I went out for the team, I made the team, and I got my room and board. So in theory, I had a full scholarship. But without Father Jerry Sheehan getting me that scholarship, I don't know how my career or my life would have turned. 4 years later, I'm getting ready to graduate from Rockhurst, and like any senior in college, you're wondering, where in the world am I going to work? How am I going to get a job? And I was worried about that. I was a major in history and education, and I wanted to teach and coach. And I'll be doggone if one day I get a phone call from Jerry Sheehan, the principal at St. Louis High. He said, Rich, Mr. Dietzler, one of our history teachers, is leaving. Would you want to teach and coach at St. Louis High? Now, how lucky can you be? You know. So I didn't really have to even apply for jobs. I went to St. Louis High, and Jerry Sheehan told me, you're not going to coach your first year. You've got to get your master's degree. You'll never get anywhere in this business without your master's degree. And so he wouldn't let me coach my first year, and so I taught 5 classes here, went to night school at St. Louis U, went to night school, our day school during the summer at St. Louis U, and in a year and a half I got my master's degree. It's that when Jerry Sheehan said, you can coach. So again, where would my life be without St. Louis High? And you know what? For 50 years, I didn't even think about it. Until John and David asked me to give this talk. Only by sitting down and looking at my life did I realize what an impact my dad and St. Louis High had on me. Kevin?
You know, my mom and dad weren't quick to give us advice, but we always had an unspoken, as Dad mentioned, expectation to do our best. No one ever pressured any one of us 6 kids to play a sport, get an A, win some award, but we strove to do it on our own by the tone our parents set. The concept is very simple and rooted in their Catholic faith. It's not that easy to put the concept into words, but I'll try. My parents' philosophy, I think, if I could put it in words, would be this. If you have the God-given ability to do something, then you should do it out of duty to Him and not for anybody else, including yourself, and do it with no excuses. If you do that, you'll have peace of mind, knowing you're doing the best with what you've been given. There's no rewards for doing this other than that. And it pleases God when you use what He's given you and use it well. That theme was constantly in the back of our minds as kids growing up in our house, whether we knew it or not. When we did something that other people thought was praiseworthy, we thought it was normal. We just moved on because we were expected to do it. My parents balanced praise with this high expectation very well. I recall one day as a grade schooler, I hit 4 home runs in a baseball game. In mid-swing, my coach took a photo of me, which I was very proud of. He handed it to me. I said, I can't wait to go home and show Dad this picture. I showed Dad, and the first thing he says, oh my gosh, look at you, your weight's way forward, your wrists are out. He said, next time get your weight back and turn your wrist over, the ball will go a lot farther. My mom, on the other hand, said, hey, I really like those hits, you did a great job today. So I realized early on that your mom and dad have different roles. Dad wanted me to challenge myself, Mom wanted me to feel good about myself, and you can grow up and you can also feel both of those things. That same philosophy led me to play basketball for the first time. I hated basketball as a kid. I didn't want to play it. I liked soccer and every other sport but basketball. And Dad said, let's go to the library. We'll get some books about dinosaurs and snakes and stuff all about back then. And we passed the library up in the car, and next thing I know, I'm in the gym. I turn around, he's gone. I cried in the bleachers for about 5 minutes until one of the kids said, you want to play? Sure, I'll play. And I played for 2 hours, and Dad came in and picked me up, and I forgot why I was mad at him. And I played pretty much the rest of my life. But Dad knew I had some skill, and again, he thought it was kind of a sin to waste it. So in our house, my brothers can attest to this, there was no bargaining or let's make a deal. You did it or you were punished. We didn't like being punished, so we did it. Once my oldest brother and I were acting up in church. We were kind of causing a small ruckus in the pew. Dad often slept at church, but this time it was And one time he's awake and he looks over at me and sees me goofing off. We made it through church. My brother and I, we felt we were off the hook when we got home. We think, oh, forget about it by the time we get home. He didn't forget. He walked in, he picked me up. He was very angry. Walked me to the bathroom, slammed me in the toilet seat. The toilet seat smashed and fell in. And he said, you and your brother will never act that way again in God's house and embarrass us. We never did that again. But all of us knew that we would do well in school. We knew we'd do well in sports. We knew we would succeed because we had that expectation all along. It wasn't arrogance. In fact, I think it was probably the opposite of arrogance. Dad never once spoke to me about my grades or my behavior my entire life. But he spoke to me about my God-given talents a lot. My grades were good because I measured them based on what I was able to actually do. We were taught never to compare ourselves with other people, materially, intellectually, physically, because that was an exercise in vain and it was guaranteed to make you miserable. We were told we were no better than anybody else, but we were just as good as everybody else, and we bought into that. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was play for my dad at St. Louis University. He was a very demanding coach. I played for Tubby Smith, as Mr. Lally mentioned, a national championship coach who was a very tough man. He wasn't even close to as demanding or as prepared as Dad was. Coach Claggett can attest to this. Dad's scouting reports were 8 to 10 pages long. We knew the other team's plays better than they did. We studied them over and over again. Our film sessions were painful because he rewinded. We'd watch our mistakes so many times, and he reminded us of our mistakes so many times. But the point is, Dad was an over-preparer, to the point of it being almost comical. He would tell us about in college, over Christmas break, he'd call us professors and say, hey, can you give me the next month's assignments? And he would go ahead and do them ahead of time. Dad always worked longer, and he worked harder than other people I ever met. In fact, that was the key lesson he probably taught us. The lesson was that most people will work hard and will get a job done. But very few will work the extra step and make that job look exemplary. He let us know if you go that extra step, when everybody else is done, then you will be doing exemplary work. Yes, he believed in discipline too. Whenever we had a bad game, practice at Salem University, we used to walk into the gym and we'd see a shopping cart full of bricks, and our hearts would sink because we knew what we were in store for. He was in a bad mood. We would have to sit there and grab a brick. He painted the bricks blue and white. I don't know why he did that, but they were blue and white bricks, and they had words like determination, effort, grit, all that things. We had to sit there in defensive position, hold them shoulder weight. And he'd tell the manager, put 20 minutes on the clock. Every time these guys drop an inch, add a minute. And we would slide and jump and run, and we would be exhausted. Guys would drop bricks on their heads. It didn't stop. Get the blood off my floor. And we kept playing. He was also very discipline-oriented if you missed class. Of course, I never missed class, nobody coached I. But other guys did. And Dad would say, meet me at 5:30. He wouldn't tell the player why. Dad would meet him in his car. And he'd say, I'm going to drive 7 miles an hour, and you're going to run beside my car. And Dad would open the passenger window and bark orders, faster, move it. You shouldn't have missed the class. And the guy would eventually collapse and not miss class again. As a 7th grader, Dad stranded me in Evansville, Indiana. We were at a basketball game playing the University of Evansville. I was a kid along with the trip, kind of being the ball boy of the team. Game was over, we lost, he was in a pretty bad mood. And when he was in a bad mood, you don't want to talk on the bus ride home. And so he tells me, I'm on the bus ready to go, I know, he'll leave me. And he says, go in there and tell the guys we're leaving in 5 minutes, everybody's late, I'm leaving. So I run in there, nobody's there. I come out, the bus is gone. There were no cell phones back then. But I really wasn't that worried, although a janitor of the arena in Evansville kind of saw me. And I think he felt pity on me, and he was like, son, don't worry, I'm sure they'll come back and get you. And I said, sir, you don't know my dad. He did come back and get me. Eventually, I didn't say a word to him, he never said a word to me to this day about that. And the bus ride home was completely silent. I'll never forget that when we got off the bus in St. Louis and we took our luggage off, one of the players in the team, Monroe Douglas, I overheard saying, he was telling one of his teammates, man, if he'll leave his own son, what's he going to do to us? Brian Tip can attest to this. We loved baseball growing up, and Dad was a heck of a player. He could throw the ball hard. He'd get a bucket of balls and say, let's go to the field, we're going to practice our hitting. We'd get our bats and go up there. Without fail, none of us wanted to be the first batter up, because that first ball was coming right at our head. Hard. And he'd say, you can't be afraid of the ball if you want to be a baseball player. We could dive to the floor. But again, he taught us a lesson. He'd say, all right, go home, see your mother, she'll patch you up. But now as a dad, I do respect him more than ever for balancing that toughness with mom's tenderness. So Dad, what are some of the hardest things you have to deal with now as a father?